for the Nbdev walkthrough, we can get started with their own documentation like this. And of course, I would recommend the tutorial end-to-end walkthrough here. It has very detailed instruction from start to finish, which I follow. And for the installation, I install all of these, and I can start with my Jupyter notebook on installation steps. So I will have two terminal opened here. So one of them I will use to start my Jupyter lab. And one of them will be for the Nbdev commands. So here is my notebook here. This is the root directory that I have. And this is the documentation for setup. And the step 0 is to install the Nbdev. And you can install the Jupyter Lab with pip or conda, or install Nbdev with pip or conda and install Quarto, and then install Quarto Jupyter Lab extension. So in this case, I'm using conda environment. And I can check my installed like extensions here, and it includes the Jupyter Lab Quarto. And one possible error that I encountered that we may come by is that the Jupyter Lab update for some reason did not work for JavaScript error. It shows the JavaScript error. So if that occurs, just switch to the previous version. And then we can go to step 0, that is to create a GitHub repository. Initialize the GitHub repository. You can create or clone a new GitHub repository, and then you can use the command nbdev new in the cloned repository to initialize an nbdev project. And if I do it, for example, I create a new folder like and then go to it here, then it will also like shows the prompts like this. And let's say branch main, something like that. You see that they will prompt my information and information about the repository itself. And it will create a new one like this. It will initiate a new repository. And I'm just going to open that one. For example, then you're going to see some already created files. So another is kind of like my module that we will export the codes into, and then the notebook with some default file. And I will show you also in the our main notebook, and then some basic license and some Python project setting. And there's this very important settings.ini file. So it includes the Python library information like this, and it will include the documentation, my developer information, and of course there's this optional which includes the requirements which we will need to update later on, and package data information. And there's also this nbdev command specific settings such as the documentation generation path, and then the library path, which is in this case another module, and then nb path, which is the notebook path we have. And that is it for the new one. Let's go back to our main. Some notes that I have here is that by default, it will generate the module with the same name as the repository. If we create already a GitHub repository and clone it. And then by default, it will add two GitHub actions. One of them is for the testing, and one of them is for deploying documents. And the documents will be automatically deployed to GitHub pages. In this case, we might like omit this action because our GitHub page is already occupied, or you don't want to deploy it. Then it's okay to omit this action or just write a new action for generating HTML documentation files. And then, of course, the Apache license is already default added. And then we just start making edits. We may have some additional installations, which include installing hooks for Git-friendly notebook with Nbdev installs hooks, and then something like install your package in development mode with this command here. It will automatically update whenever we have an update in our library. And then it's also possible to review our documentations with Nbdev preview and then add the changes. And before pushing to GitHub, we need to use the Nbdev prepare. So it's a bundle of all of the important commands, such as, and that is like exporting the module, testing the notebook, cleaning the notebook, and then, for example, update the README. So this is all included in the Nbdev prepare command. And finally, let's push to GitHub and we can start it. So for any other extra commands, we can check it with Nbdev help. And it will show the list of commands available and what they do. Okay, so now for our main workflow, you can check the main workflow here. So this is documentation, and the sample used in this is from FastAI Vision. So I'll be using the code and text from this part here. So computer vision intro, for it to be closer to what we actually do in Ninja Labo. And I'll be having a hypothesis that we want to build a classifier between cats and dogs. So all of the codes and nodes are from FastAI. So for our step one, we have the experimental notebook. So in this case, we are just like, we're just using some very uncleaned code, and we just run it for experimenting like we usually do as a data scientist. And for example, I create a new one here. So my title should be, let's say, sample, like this. So the notebook content is all of this part here. So new file, I'll start to install the FastAI. So I already installed it in this environment. And then I go to here, I just start to import from FastAI Vision. And I download the pets dataset, which includes the cats and dog images. And it's already downloaded in my case. Next, I'll extract the images into files, and also I'll see how many files are there. So there are 7,390 files. Then from that, I use FastAI to create the dataset loaders. And I also show one patch of the dataset loader. So like this, so the image are shown here. Then I start to fine tune a model. So in this case, I use the ResNest 34, and this is a vision learner, a function from FastAI to quickly create the learner. So I fine tune it, which means I train it to this data loader, and let's just wait for the training result. So only I use here only one epoch. Is now the training is finished. I show the results of the inference. And this is the result of one patch. And finally, I use this predict function of the learner to predict a single image. And here's are the results. So the first one is the label itself. And then there's the probability between cats and dogs. So in this case, the label itself is based on this image loader from name function. So if the cat, the file name is usually with uppercase, and then for the dog, the file name is in lower cases. So that is the function, and that creates a label. In this case, false means that it's the dog file, so there is no uppercase in the file name. And the probability here is that is very low probability for cats and very high for dog. So that's my testing phase. Now I move on to my refined and modularize the code. So in this step, I decide that I want to generate a predictor for single image classification between cats and dogs. So the way that I choose to do that is I use a OOP programming approach. So I create a class for cat versus dog image classifier. And from then I add the functions to generate from a pre-trained model, and I add function for predicting from a single for predicting a single image. And I also have a test for my class. However, it is possible in this step to use functional programming instead. It is also possible that we skip this step if your your code is already clean or is ready for like exporting into a module. Then it's fine to skip this step. But here I'm following this step, and this is my entire experimental notebook. I don't do much changes from that. And I create a class for cat and dog image classifying down here. So the original code is again from the Fast AI.
Sorry for interrupting. Before I continue, could you just press a button of hide in the bottom of your screen?
Oh yes, okay. So now I have my experimental notebook.
And
here.
probably it would be better to configure the on the right bottom of open privacy policy.
Oh yes. Okay. So for this class, cat or dog image classifier, so I add the comments for it name, and then for the init function, I suppose that we take in a pre-trained model architecture. All of these are from Fast AI Vision. And a metric function, error rate. So these are the default values that I previously used in my experimental notebook here. And it's also imported all from fastai.vision. And the default init function, it will kind of form a data loader here, and then it used that to fine tune with one epoch for the learner, and it add the attribute into the self of the class. And then here for the predict function, it takes in a file path it's used to predict a single image with the learner, and then it like extract the prediction like this. Here's the label, here's the dog probability and cat probability, and then it prints out the results, and finally it returns these label probability of cats and dogs. So these are my class, but it is also possible that we just use functional programming instead. So for example, we create a new predict function, or we create a new like generator classifier generator function. Is okay for both ways. So I run that here, and then I add the use case for it. So I just create a new classifier with all of the default options. I don't input anything new, but it's also possible to modify this. And then I upload an image here. So I have one image in this images, and it's the cat's image. I upload that here, and I use the classifier.predict function in order to predict this file. So if I run this here, then again, it will show the training. That is because we already have the training in the init function. Yes, so as you can see, the results are printed out like this. So the animal in this picture is predicted to be cat. And here are the individual probabilities. And then I add the assert here. So assert the test. So these are the tests. So of course, all the tests passed in this case. And that's the end of my step 2 to refine and modularize your code. And now for step 3, it's going to involve a lot of more files. So first off, the step 3 is to export this module. So to export this module, so we need to make several changes to different files. So one is the setting.ini. So in this case, as you can see, I use the library fastai. So I will need to add this to the requirement of my module. So I will add this into, you go back to the main repository, then you go into the ini file, and then you add it into the requirements line. So here I've added fastai, and I also specify the version to be 2.7.17. And it is possible that you just add this requirements. It's possible to specify the version as I did, or specify the version to be at least some version. If there are multiple libraries, you can add them by separating with a space like this. So fastai and then space and then pandas, for example. Now, for the notebook itself, I will need to add the directives. So fastai, Nbdev has several directives that you can see the list of which here. So I will use those that are for generating the source code. So first, we need to add the default export and name. This is going to be the exported file or exported module. And then these are for the several options of the export. So you have the simplest one, which is to export the items into the generated module and also the documentation. It's also it's also possible to export and not show it in the documentation with the export internal. And of course here exports here it shows the source code rather than the documentation version of it, which we will come to in the later part. But here I would just use the default, the simplest option, which is just export. And I also need to set the default export. So the default, again, we don't need to touch this experimental notebook part yet, but we can export it into a module. So in this case, in the workflow file, I already exported into the classifier. So now I will need to change it a little bit. So for example, I decide to export it into a different module that is, no, let's say sample, and then dot, and then classifier. So this is where I'm going to export it into. And now I need to export. What I need to export is actually just my class. So I don't really need to export anything else. So I just write one export line here. And then also, like, it's also necessary to export the kind of the requirements, because it needs to be there in the file. So in this case, I will add it here at the start of the notebook. And finally, we don't really need to export the use case with tests in case like we don't really need to put it there in the module. We just need to put the reusable code into the module. And then here at the final step, I need to export it with the Nbdev export. So there are two options to do this. You can either export it with the command line. So for example, if you look here in the Nbdev commands, you see the Nbdev export here, and this will export all of your notebook. But in this case, if I just need to export, let's say, just one notebook, then it's possible to just use this cell. So I will use a cell for this, and it's going to be just from Nbdev import the export command, and then I just run it here. And if I run it, then as you can see, there's no really any messages showing up. But if we go into the module directory here, you're going to see a new file. So in this case, my file should be sample.classifier. So here you see that it automatically creates a new directory called sample. And if I click inside it, there is my new file classifier here. And if I check it, it's going to like show all of the code that I marked with the export directive. So the one part here that is corresponding to this part here. And then my class over here is going to be also in here, this part. And that is how to export. Now, one final like change in Nbdev test module. So it's also like this one is the module itself, not the Nbdev test. Sorry. So the step 4 is the final like benefits of using Nbdev. That is, you can also create the documentation. So now, as you can see here, we have all of the code cells. So we don't have any narration yet. Of course, you can, when you work, you can already have some narration, but in this case, we haven't added anything. So now we can add all of the narration in the markdown cell. So for example, if I start with here, I change this into my title. So sample. So sample notebook from instructions of Fast AI. And I say something, I have something like this. And then we have the installation. We don't really need the installation, but then we have the add narration. So let's say I add all of the narration from Nbdev, but it's quite long. So I add here markdown narration, and I'd add here let's say something like this, and then I add some more, let's say add down here before the data loader. Add down here before the fine tuning. And then finally add down here before the show results. So, and then one final addition is when we build the classifier. Oh, I think I haven't copied that. And then yes, so that's all the narration. So now in addition to our class here, which is going to be exported, maybe and then we can use the show doc of Nbdev to additionally show the class attributes or class function. So I'm going to demonstrate it after the review, but here are some additional changes that we need to make. So you need to add the directives to cells to determine which cell is visible. So as I mentioned before, the export for adding will automatically show the module and also in the documentation. And we also need to add hide for testing cells and Nbdev operational cells. So for example, the Nbdev export or Nbdev importing from show doc. And we also have the directives here. So just use the one that we want to use. And here's all the cell visibilities, which will correlate to the rendered documentation. So I will add that here. So let's say I want all of the experimental notebook to be visible, perhaps except the install. So I will add hide here. Like this. And then I will have all of the remaining to be visible up until probably after the use case, we have the test. We don't really need the user to know this test. So we just hide it. And here is the operational. So I will also hide the operation export from of Nbdev. So now I can use the preview in order to generate or review the documentation. So I use that. I'm going to use that here. So Nbdev preview is going to take some time to check the changes in our documentation, and then it's going to show It's going to open with a localhost like this. So this is the README file, the default one. So just some basic instructions, but here are our sample documentation that we just created. And as you can see, all of the notebook narrations are rendered as quartile pages. And we also have our our codes here. So this is just basically, it's kind of like a quartile exporting of a Jupyter notebook. And as you can see here, the noticeable change is, for example, here in the in the notebook itself, we have the class definition in this cell here, but in this created documentation is going to just show the sample or information about the class. So for example, you have the architecture, which is type function and default here, and the details are also here, which are already defined like this with the comments. And then you don't really show the function yet, but we can also show it. So this is all going to be automatically generated if we export a class. And the documentation is going to show the show doc version of it. So what that means, I'm going to have here, which is the use show doc of Nbdev. So here I'm going to import it just before this class. So so it's one of Nbdev function. I'm going to again hide the import from the user side because we don't need a user to see the Nbdev operations. And if we use the show doc in the notebook itself, so show doc cator doc image classifier is going to show this, which is exactly what we can see in the render documentation. So it's a special function to support documentation side of Nbdev, and we can use that here. And we can also use it on a specific function. So let's say show doc cat or doc image classifier, and then dot. I'm going to show the predict function. Oh, I think I made. Yes. It's going to show also the information about my function. So it's also possible to show documentation about just a separate function. So def something like this, and then show doc. This is also possible, like this. And for the command side, if you want better documentation, it's always good to have a comment. So Nbdev support this kind of comment. So just comment straight onto your parameter declaration, and it will automatically show that information in the details part. And also, of course, you can use the type hinting. So for example, here I hint the file path to be string, and it's going to show that in my documentation, that is show doc string, as you can see this. And here is the actual description, short description is also shown in the show doc support a utility function. And here, as you can see, if you make changes into your notebook, it will also automatically be rendered in the documentation if you just keep the preview open. So here, my Nbdev preview is still running, and it's updating the sample.html, which is the notebook that I just updated. Now for some final tips and instructions. So some tip is for the module packaging. I have tested, and each notebook can only export one module or into one file. So in this case, that is going to be defined by the default export here. But it is possible that we structure our module by adding the dot and like this. So here I add the dot between sample and classifier. So it will automatically create a new directory sample, and then it will add the file classifier into it. And then notebook packaging. So here, if you look at my render documentation, you will see that there are the default files, and it's all in the kind of main sidebar like this. But it's also possible that I have here one additional notebook in the section. So the way that I can create this is by, if you look at my notebook directory, it has one big directory additional, and then here I have one additional notebook. So by default, it will automatically read this as a new section for the quarto dev, and we will add all of the notebook inside that subfolder as the files in the subsection. And then it's also possible if we don't want to use the subsection. So for example, I have here the sidebar file, and it's going to be the quarto sidebar content kind of. And you can set it by adding new sections and content into this. For example, if I want to add my a file into a section of workflow along with my notebook, original notebook file, then I'm going to add a new section here. So section workflow. And then here I have the contents. First content is going to be my my original main notebook. So and second content is going to be my new one. If I save it here, then it's going to be re-rendered. And as you can see, the workflow now has two notebook. And this one of them is my original notebook, and one of them is my new sample file. So it's gonna take some time to re-render everything, but that's how we structure the notebook. And one final tip is for the Jupyter Lab support. While Jupyter Lab is a little bit more, it doesn't come with automatic hinting type, Python type hinting, but it can be installed with these instructions. So you can install the language server support and then install the Python one. And then you can check that with the settings in order to customize your utilities. So it will help when creating these exported modules and functions, because it checks our code styles and everything along the way. Yes. So that's going to be one last thing here is that before that we push into GitHub, it's best that we run this command, or we run the clean command, because if you can see in my GitHub VS Code page here, it detects all of these changes in even the setup or the workflow file, even though that it doesn't really, I didn't make any changes to that. So the Nbdev clean will take care of it. So now we just need to close our notebook like this, and then we start to making changes by we start cleaning this with the clean. So I close this here, I stop the review, and then I run Nbdev clean, and it will automatically remove any unnecessary change to my notebook due to opening it. And here I added everything, and I just need to push to GitHub, and that's the final step. that we need to run. And on GitHub itself, if I push this here, but anyway, so if we push that there, then on our GitHub, it will automatically run this test function. So this test function, and it will run all of the cells that include the test or the assert commands. So Nbdev only have the assert command, or it will use the fast core test comparison. It doesn't support the well-used test like unit test or PyTest, but it still support the assert. So we will mostly operate with that. And then finally, even though that we don't deploy it, even if you don't deploy it, it is also possible to generate the documentation with this command nbdocs here. Again, it's going to take some time, but to render all of our notebook like this. And we are going to have it in our docs here like this. And if we open it with Chrome, so or live server, any option is fine, then it's going to show the one that we saw when we run the preview. Yes, that's it for my Nbdev tutorial.
Thank you for quite amazing presentation. But can you just quickly demonstrate one to call the package you created from other?
Oh, yes. Let me just. I'm just going to open my Jupyter again.
Yeah, sorry for that. I think you might not be expecting, but I think that would be a quite one of the practical thing we probably do.
Yes. So, where is it? In this Nbdev test score. So all of the module can be if you run the pip install environments like this. It's going to build your dependencies, and it's going to install the Nbdev test module, which is our module, and then you can use it by adding new, like importing. So here it's only importing from core, but it's possible to import from the classifier. So Nbdev was the sample classifier import everything. Oh, test. I forgot the test. Yes. Hold on. I think I need to restart my Jupyter notebook before because I didn't run the pip install everything. So now I need to restart it in order to restart the kernel. So now it will run without errors, as you can see here. And then I run this again. Hold on. I think it's broken somewhere. I need to restart it.
Just even you close the browser, still the Jupyter notebook is running in the behind. So you might need to stop or restart the kernel.
Yes, I just run that. Yes, so I think it should work now because this one is the one that I installed like previously. So
I think you are not sharing the screen now.
oh, okay. I think it should be. I need to check the file name. There is the classifier. I'm not sure if the kernel is updated. Let me just restart the kernel.
Have you done pip install -e?
Yes, but I think the kernel is not. Oh, maybe I'm just gonna run it in here then. Um, but here's the notebook. Because I just run it here, so I think if oh wait, this one is separate from the other one that I used to start my notebook, so I might have to start it from here. So close this. Sorry for the inconvenience. I'm just gonna share the whole screen again. So this entire screen. And here I just installed it in a separate one. So probably it doesn't update yet. So I need to rerun it again here. And then now it should open. Because this one, if this one run, then it should also run this. Okay, I'm just gonna run export everything. And now it should generate the one. This is so much strange because when I tested with the Hugging Face one, it doesn't show this error. Because this one it's already importing from the core. So I'm not sure why it's not importing from the classifier one.
Okay, once I'm going to stop recording and let's sort it out together.
Yes. Yes, so in case we need to import from another notebook, we need to, let's say that I have another notebook here and I have a new function. So let's call this hello world, and then it has one function that is to print hello. Like this. Then I export it here. And in my terminal, I need to run the, beforehand, I need to run the pip. I need to run the pip install E, so editable. So I need to run this only once, and then afterwards it should be able to detect any new changes. And I run export. Now I should be able to access this. So let's say from Nbdev test dot sample dot this one exports to regression. So sample dot regression import hello world. Did I miss anything?
Isn't kernel of Jupyter Notebook has to be restarted?
Yes, the kernel has to be restarted on this side because I installed it here. So I need to stop the kernel and then restart it from where I installed.
Yeah, probably you don't restart the whole Jupyter Notebook, but you just restart the single notebook. That would be enough.
So now you should be able to access it. Here, and it's like yes.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for really nice tutorial, and that's really practical and appreciated. Thanks. Now I'm stopping recording.